Yeah.
You've made so...
Can you talk a little bit about the strikes and the controversy around Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said?
I don't know anything about it. He said he did not say that, and I believe him 100%.
So you don't know if there was
You're talking about the two men?
The second strike to kill the two men.
No, he said he didn't do it. He said he never said
Would you be okay with that if he did?
He said he didn't do it, so I don't have to make that decision.
Mr. You've made so clear how you want to keep drugs out of the U.S.
Right.
Can you explain more about why you would pardon a notorious drug trafficker?
Well, I don't know who you're talking about. Which
Juan
one?
Orlando Hernandez.
Well, I was asked by Honduras, many of the people of Honduras, they said it was a Biden setup. I don't mean Biden. Look, Biden didn't know he was alive, but it was the people that surround the Resolute desk, surround Biden when he was there, which was about very little time. And the people of Honduras really thought he was set up, and it was a terrible thing. He was the president of the country, and they basically said he was a drug dealer because he was the president of the country. And they said it was a Biden administration setup, and I looked at the facts and I agreed with them.
What evidence did you share that he was set up and that he wasn't?
Well, you take a look. I mean, they could say that you take any country you want. If somebody sells drugs in that country, that doesn't mean you arrest the president and put him in jail for the rest of his life. And that includes this country, okay? To be honest, I mean, if somebody does something wrong, do you put the president of the country in jail? They said it was a Biden setup. It was a Biden administration setup. And you have a big race going on this week, next week. I think it's going to be a very important race. It'll be interesting to see Honduras. That's what you're talking about, right?
Correct, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So, once again, that is our president, Donald Trump, literally contradicting himself by saying that just because you're the president of a country where people are selling drugs doesn't mean that you yourself are a drug dealer, but those are literally the pretenses that he is using to try to invade Venezuela. Make it make sense, folks. Make it make sense. All right, folks, we are back here on WLTH 1370 AM. That is 92.7 in the FM dial, the region's choice and the people's voice. Yes, it is. It is December the 5th, 2025. It is 6:37 in the PM. The future's here. The future is now. Yes, it is. And you just heard our president. Just because people sell drugs in your country does not mean that you yourself are a drug dealer. Yeah, I know Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela is like, what? That's literally what he's accusing me of. These people don't have to make sense. Like, we are at the point in the Trump phenomenon where the only people still with Trump are the most brain dead or cruel and vicious people, sociopathic, fascistic leaning people that there are. Even normie Republicans have started to go in the opposite direction. You see people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, dissenting from the Trump administration. You see people like Thomas Massie, Rand Paul. The most normie and of the Republicans, and even a lot of libertarians, are leaving Donald Trump. It's hard to believe it's only been 11 months. Less than 11 months. It's been almost 11 months since he's been in office. That's insane. It seems like this has been 2 or 3 years because there's just been so much. One of the reasons why we haven't had a lot of intros, because I always like to start the show off with an intro, a clip, is because since he's been president, like every week is just jam-packed with news. Every week he does about 10 different things that just makes you go, what the hell is going on here? And you guys know I am no fan of the Democrats, and I always thought that a lot of the rhetoric surrounding Donald Trump from the Democrats was over-exaggerated. He's a corrupt, crooked, neocon, neoliberal politician, just like all of our other politicians. But man, this second term that he has had, he has gone above and beyond, even a lot of the rhetoric from the opposition. Like, he really has. This administration absolutely has, which is crazy because his first term was sort of just a more politically incorrect version of, say, George W. Bush's presidency. He was your typical bomb a bunch of countries, give tax cuts to the rich Republican, but with this sort of extra element of ticking off anybody who values cultural norms. But now, this second administration, he just said, look, I guess I should just become everything they said I was. Whatever you say I am that. And, a big part of that is his willingness to just be openly bribed. All of our politicians are corrupt. All of them are bribe worthy. Even at the Biden administration, we all saw what happened with, Ukraine, and how they gave his son a no-show job for $80,000 a month when he was running he was running the point on Ukraine policy during the Obama administration. Yeah, that happens. But Trump is taking it to a whole new level, and a big part of that now is he is announcing that he is pardoning Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, who was extradited to the United States and convicted of drug trafficking. And no, Juan Orlando Hernandez is not a pretend drug lord. He is an actual drug lord. Unlike Nicolas Maduro, who was literally a bus driver before he got into politics, Juan Orlando Hernandez is a literal drug lord. So why is Trump helping him? Well, Hernandez came to power when the United States government supported a right-wing military coup against their democratically elected left-wing president way back in 2009. This was under Obama and Hillary Clinton. Yeah, under Obama and Hillary Clinton. But his hair looked like mine. You know. That's why I talked some years ago about the activist Berta Cáceres, who was like, their version of Rosa Parks or something. She was like their Rosa Parks or their Harriet Tubman in Honduras. She personally said, look, I'm going to be murdered. And Hillary Clinton, it will be Hillary Clinton's fault when I get murdered. And she was murdered. And of course, it was Hillary Clinton's fault. But since the imperialism gene in America is bipartisan, Trump has taken up the cause of this right-wing dictator as well. Now, after the left-wing president was couped in 2009, our government put in place two corrupt right-wing coup regimes in Honduras, which were run by drug dealers. Literal, actual, matter-of-factual drug dealers, of one which was Juan Orlando Hernandez. He was convicted of trafficking more than 400 tons. 400 tons. 400 tons. Yes. Of cocaine. And not only just cocaine, machine guns. One of his best friends in the drug game, El Chapo. That El Chapo, the Mexican drug lord El Chapo. Guzman. Now, Trump is letting Hernandez out of prison because, like I said, the imperialist gene in America is bipartisan. It doesn't matter whether you vote Democrat or Republican. They're both imperialists. So while Obama and Hillary Clinton might have overthrown their government to put a right-wing coup government intact back in 2009, well, that didn't necessarily stick because we lost control of Honduras in 2022. There was actually a party called Libre Power, which was a left-wing government. Once again, they came to power. And so now Donald Trump's in office. And he's saying, well, we need to go back to the drug lords, the right-wing drug lords. We need to put them back in power because they will do what we want them to do. And so Donald Trump and Marco Rubio, who is the Gusano of all Gusanos. If you don't know what a Gusano is, look it up. It is basically a Hispanic version of an Uncle Tom. You know, Marco Rubio is a Gusano through and through, from Cuba, who's been begging the U.S. government to overthrow all the Latin American left-wing governments for many years. That's what Gusanos do. So they've been openly meddling in Honduras's current election, which is going on as we speak, I think. And the National Party, which is what Juan Orlando Hernandez was a part of, that's who they're trying to get back in power. But they are basically a drug cartel. They are basically a drug cartel. Now, again, we have proof of this. In 2018, now who was president in 2018? Donald Trump. This was the first Trump administration. Juan Orlando Hernandez's brother was arrested here in America for drug trafficking charges. But it doesn't matter. In spite of that, the Hernandez brothers continued to be good with all of our presidents. They were good with Obama. They were good with Trump. They were good with Joe Biden, which once again shows you it does not matter which party is in charge. They both work for the same people and work with the same people, especially when it comes to things like foreign policy. Juan Orlando Hernandez was also very fond of Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly. They had 20 meetings, over 20 meetings, during the first Trump administration. And so the funny thing about this is, like I said, this guy, Juan Orlando Hernandez, is actually who Donald Trump is pretending that Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, is. Nicolas Maduro is not a drug dealer. Again, he was a bus driver before he got into politics. A literal bus driver. Very little of the drugs that come into this country come from Venezuela. They either come from China or Mexico or Colombia. The cocaine comes from Colombia. The fentanyl comes from China and Mexico. So why are we about to overthrow Venezuela's government? And why are you letting Honduras's drug lord president out of jail when you say your number one intention is to stop drug usage, but you've picked the one country that barely has any drugs coming out of it to overthrow? But once again, it is because the U.S. imperialist agenda is to overthrow any Latin American countries, any countries in this hemisphere that have left-wing leaders. They did it in Chile. They did it in Guatemala. They did it in Brazil. They did it in Jamaica. They did it in Haiti. Pretty much every country in this side of the world, and even some in Africa and the Middle East, if you have a left-wing government, even if it's democratically elected, once that government starts saying stuff like, we're going to let the people have control of the resources and not big American corporations, oh, you know, you're not long for the world at that point. You are not long for the world at that point. And that's why they're trying to get rid of Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso, and Abdul Rahman Chiani and Assimi Goita in Mali and Niger, respectively. They're trying to get rid of them because they're saying, we're kicking out the French, we're kicking out the Americans, we're kicking out all the Western imperialists. We want to control our own resources. We will deal with who we want to. If we want to deal with China, we'll deal with China. If we want to deal with Russia, we'll deal with Russia. That's our business. They are our resources. We will sell them to who we want to sell them to. And that has always been what the United States government has been against. And that's why they hate Venezuela. That's why they hate Cuba. And that's why they get gusanos like Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz to push this nonsense agenda where we have to keep overthrowing these countries and assassinating leaders, which we're currently trying to do in Venezuela. And so, once again, it's not just about drugs or resources. It's also about turning over the control of these countries to the neo-feudalist capitalists, people like Peter Thiel. The libertarian tech bros. They have actually tried to take over Honduras, and Juan Orlando Hernandez was a part of that. He was a partner. And so they started creating these economic development zones, or ZEDs, Z-E-D, that they were saying would stimulate economic development. And so they were these super libertarian utopias. And they would go around the world saying that we're going to turn Honduras and these Latin American countries into these cryptocurrency friendly, beachside, libertarian, capitalist paradises with low taxes to little to no taxes, and you could have all the cryptocurrency you want, all the Bitcoin or whatever. This zone recently made Bitcoin its legal tender and passed legislation facilitating the issuance of Bitcoin bonds. Actually, this is all a part of the reason why we are letting a literal drug lord loose here in America, who is in prison here, but now we're letting him go. And it's important to state that a lot of our closest allies in Latin America have always been drug lords, besides Juan Orlando Hernandez in Honduras. In Colombia, Alvaro Uribe, he was a drug lord. Ecuador, Daniel Noboa, his father was a rich bastard named Alvaro Noboa. He was a drug trafficker. Felipe Calderon from Mexico. He was actually linked to a man named Genaro Garcia Luna, who was a drug trafficker, and Javier Milei, who we just gave $40 billion, a full $40 billion lifeline to Argentina. Javier Milei, another crypto libertarian tech capitalist bro, who's been linked to drug lords like Jose Luis Espert, and of course the Contras in Nicaragua. That's how we ended up with the crack epidemic here in this country. Our government in the 1980s wanted to help overthrow the Sandinista government, the left-wing government, and people like Daniel Ortega, who beat them off. And so Ronald Reagan and those people gave the Contras all this, weapons and money and all these other things, this aid to help them out. In return, those Contras flooded black communities in the United States with crack, including places like here in Gary. We were crack central for a long time. in the 90s and the 80s. So again, all this stuff is connected. The crack epidemic here in this country, the drug lords in Latin America, who our government, the CIA, chooses to be in power. And so again, you can't really tune out of this stuff and just say, I only care about what's going on in America, because what's going on in these countries actually determines stuff like which communities are going to be full of crack. Who's going to be full of crack? And as far as Venezuela goes, Donald Trump is once again continuing to try to instigate, and that's the correct word. He's literally trying to instigate a conflict with Venezuela. That's why he keeps blowing up these boats. And there was actually a brother, I forget what his name is Alvin something, who worked under Pete Hegseth, who actually was a whistleblower and saying, hey, this is illegal. And they just fired him. They fired him they threw him under the bus. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, said, yeah, you know. And so once again, the black man takes the fall. Pete Hegseth is going to be fine, apparently. So Donald Trump is instigating this conflict with Venezuela after bombing countless innocent people, not just Venezuelan, but Colombians, trying to instigate a fight with Venezuela. President Trump has declared effectively a no-fly zone over Venezuela. They are literally, as we speak, flying B-52 bombers off the coast of Venezuela. This is the largest concentration of military force that we've seen in the Caribbean since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Do you know how long ago that was? That was 63 years ago. Now, Donald Trump actually did speak on the phone with Nicolas Maduro, who is Venezuela's leader, a few weeks ago. Supposedly, they might meet at some point in the near future, but nothing has been scheduled. Now, Marco Rubio, as I just told you, the head gusano in charge, was on the phone as well, which, again, he is maybe the most dangerous person in our government right now, because again, he's the one agitating for all these wars. And it will be a war. The people of Venezuela, Maduro, who they keep saying is the worst dictator in the history of the world, he's actually passing out guns to the citizens. And the citizens of Venezuela are ready to fight with the American government, our military. I've seen it. I've seen the video. Old ladies with shotguns and assault rifles, ready to go fight for their country. That's a very strange thing for a dictator to do. How many dictators you know hand out guns to everybody? Most dictators would be afraid that the public would use those guns to overthrow them. But not Maduro. Because the Venezuelan people know who the real enemy is. And of course, the corporate liberal Democrats have virtually nothing to say about this, because most of them agree with it. Because as I said, the imperialist gene is bipartisan. The agenda is bipartisan. It doesn't matter which one of them that you vote for. This is one of the reasons I say constant, we have to opt out. We have to opt out. We have to find a new way for to put our political energy instead of the two corporate imperialist parties. All right, folks. We had a very heavy first hour of the show. It is 7 o'clock on the dot, so you guys know what that means. It's time for some happy happies. We'll be right back after these.